Hey everyone, so welcome back to Westside's Healthy Living Space and welcome to the fourth model and the final model of this course, Struggle-Free Healthy Living, and taking a spiritual approach to health and well-being. So the final model is based on healthy relationships. And I think that when I say healthy relationships, I make reference to not just romantic relationships, because I know when people talk about relationships, they think a lot about that's where their mind goes. But actually, even work relationships, relationships with friendship, oftentimes different relationships can also come with stress and can also come with just not making you feel good because the relationship isn't in the best of states. So I think healthy relationships are important. They're important for us in everything we do. I deal a lot with athletes. Sometimes you are in a team and you don't have a healthy relationship with your coach or the other players. I was one of those people that I think that if I had healthier relationship with some of my teammates and the coach, I probably would have had better statistics, etc. And I'm sure there are other people that you may have felt you could have done better if you just had a healthier relationship. So it's not just so I felt like it's important for our health and well-being because if our relationships aren't healthy, they can be stressful. Then the other case is they're stressful or they become less productive. And if they're less productive, it makes us feel bad about ourselves because it impacts what we're able to achieve with certain things. So that's why I thought this model was important. So I'm just going to go straight into it, and I'm going to share my screen with you. Okay, ready? Let's go. So, what are the basics of a healthy relationship? So, the basics of a healthy relationship are, let me just remove this. Sorry, my screen is getting a mind of its own. Um, okay, no, um, this is getting a mind of its own. Okay, okay, right. That's what I was trying to do. Okay, so. Yes. Okay, so the basics of a relationship, of a healthy relationship, in my opinion, is not the absence of any type of conflict, but the absence of unhealthy conflict. Some conflicts are healthy, and sometimes healthy conflicts are a good thing. Healthy conflicts enable growth, enable development, and enable progress. Because sometimes you need to be challenged in order to effect change. Sorry about this. My screen is playing up. I'm trying to um show myself. Okay, yeah, that's it. So, a healthy relationship should enable you to grow, should have there should be peace around, and you should feel supported and you should be supportive to the other person. This is a give and take. So, relationship obviously is between two people. So, I think for the two people, you should experience some form of growth. And there should be a purpose. It shouldn't just be a tick box. Most relationships, whether it's obvious or not obvious to you at the time, there's a purpose. For friendship, it might just be companionship, comfort, helping each other, being a source of relaxation. If you're in a sports team, it's about working towards winning a championship or achieving a team goal, etc. If you're in the work environment, it might be about being more productive at work. So there should be a purpose of every single relationship you have. And most importantly, it can't just be about me, myself, and I. It's not just about yourself. So I've put together 7 principles that I think might help to improve the health and well-being of whatever relationship you have now and your relationships in different spheres of your life. I feel these are general principles that cut across different areas of your life. So the first one is, like I said, there should be a purpose to every relationship. And it should lead to more productivity for the people involved in that relationship. There should be help. We should be able to help each other to achieve that purpose and that defined purpose and defined goal. And it should be impactful. Purpose and impact kind of go hand in hand. Most times, if there's a purpose to something, there's going to be an impact on something or someone, somehow, some way, some shape, and some form. And so those are the three things that I feel should govern the first principle in terms of purpose. A relationship should be purposeful, should have purpose. Then there should be intentionality. I think that everybody involved in that relationship should be intentional. I think that one of the things I'm learning, certainly as I get older in life, being a mother, etc., is for my relationships to survive in this season, it's going to take a certain amount of intentionality. I think I've always been a bit intentional, but I haven't really thought deep about it because I haven't had as much on my hands. But I think for the first time in my life, I'm having to be extremely intentional about maintaining those relationships that are important to me and that matter. Some relationships like work, etc., I'm also having to ask myself, in order for me to get things done, because I haven't been given any more time, even though I feel like I have a lot more on my hand. And the only way to do that is to make sure I'm intentional about using my time wisely and prioritizing the people that matter. And recognizing people that don't necessarily prioritize me. And that's not a bad thing. It's not about it's not about relationship goes through phases, but being intentional means there has to be an element of prioritization, and not all relationships, you can't be intentional to to everyone at the same time. So there has to be a little bit of prioritization with intentionality, and that also is closely linked to expectations. Sometimes it's good. Some things happen naturally, but some things don't necessarily happen as natural. And I think certainly in a work setting or in a sports setting, a team, I think that it's good for expectations of both parties to be clear. And I think that hard as it is sometimes that's when you need to have a conversation with the coach. What are their expectations of me? And what are, or, if it's in the work environment, your management, etc. Most times when you go into a job, you have an idea of the expectation, but it's only when you actually start the job that you start to have a deeper level of understanding. And I think that it's important for you to understand the expectations on one side at least, and be able to manage those expectations, because that will help you in terms of you being more intentional and more focused and more productive. And ultimately, that will enable you to get more out of the relationship. I think that certainly from a spiritual standpoint, not many of us think about the importance of service. And I think healthy relationships have to involve you being of service and acting out of service. And I think vice versa. You should be able to have people around you that are willing to be of service, are willing to help when you need help. And even if that means them being out of service and vice versa, you know, most healthy connections involve giving of some sort. And that could be money, it could be time, it could be effort, it could be different things, but there has to involve some element of giving. And if one person is doing all the giving or there's no giving, then I would question how healthy that relationship is. In fact, yes, money, but in fact, that should be the least of, what is expected when we're talking of level of service. Service is important because service leads to productivity. Service is what nurtures relationships and protects relationships as well. And we look at Abigail in the Bible. David, before David ever became king, yes, she had an inclination that this man was going to be king, but even then, there's a lot of people that wouldn't offer themselves as service, even where she was, established woman in married to a wealthy man, wealthy in her own right, was willing to come down off her high horse and be of service to a man that was kind of, you know, I mean, yes, anybody could say I'm going to be king, but he wasn't really. working, he wasn't really in that setting, and she was willing to service him. And in being of service, she was able to change his destiny, the destiny of her household, and an entire nation, indirectly. So that just helps you to understand the full value of service and how important and valuable service is, in relationships. Love, and I'm not talking about romantic love, but I think that if you're looking at healthy relationships and you look at people from a place of love, and love, another other words for love, because I think in reality people, see love a lot of times subconsciously in the romantic fashion. But realistically, love is about listening. It's about being empathetic and thoughtful, and it's about giving what counts to the other person. So it's not about giving what's important to you, it's what's important to that person. And what's important to that person is probably, it may be something that they've asked for in the past, or maybe something that you've looked deep, observed them, and been thoughtful about giving. Sometimes I feel like there are times where people give things. Oh, sorry, I'm just going to have to pause so that um I can get my battery. My battery is a bit low. Okay, so let's close. Let me pause and get my battery. Okay. Hey, right. So, love, principle 4 was about love. And I think that love is patient, it's kind, and it's enduring. And when we say giving what counts to that person, it has to be what matters to that person. There's no point you giving what you think, what you feel like giving, if it doesn't mean much to the person. That's not really love. That's just you making yourself feel better. Healthy love grows, it adapts, and it evolves. Life changes, life happens. And if you have a relationship with someone that's based on love, I think you have to be willing to grow, to adapt, and to evolve with them, and accept the fact that certain things may be done differently in different seasons. I think the book of Corinthians 13 4 to 6 probably explains it way better than I can even attempt to explain. So you may want to use that as a reference point of view if you have any doubts. And I think it's important to refer to that scripture and to go back to it, because I think sometimes we just forget certain things, and we, just kind of go through the motions kind of thing. So I think that is good for us to reflect sometimes and just remind ourselves what love is, and whether in the relationships that we have. It could be a friend, it could be a person, whether we're acting and doing things from a place of love, from a place of healthy love, I would add. So, okay. And then the fifth principle is really about alignment. I think that for a relationship to be healthy, there has to be an alignment. And that's not the same as being the same, but it's about having shared goals and a common destination. And I think that if you think about a job that you're doing, or if you think about if you're going to work with someone, there has to be some sort of link. You wouldn't get a job that you applied for if you didn't tick certain boxes and if they didn't think that there was an alignment in terms of what you like, what you're trying to do, and where you're trying to go. And that's why certain questions are asked. Similarly, if you're on a team, you generally have a team goal. Everyone wants to do better and everyone wants to achieve higher heights. And oftentimes, there's a problem and a fracture in teams when there's a lack of alignment, where maybe one person feels like they should be playing this post, that person feels they should be playing that same place, etc. And maybe one person is aiming for this, the other person is aiming, it just doesn't work, it falls apart. So, and that's the same at any basic level. So there has to be an alignment. And I think that in order for you to have a healthy relationship, if, say, for example, you're going into a new set of relationships, maybe a new job, maybe a new setup, then I think that you should make sure that there's an alignment before you commit. I think I've had my fingers burnt a number of times because when I've tried to go into things or when I've gone into certain setups, I've kind of gone in at face value and not really seen or surveyed or taken the time to see if there's an alignment in terms of my values and the direction of travel of that setup. And that's happened even in terms of, say, church, for example. I've been to one or two churches where I've made the mistake of committing myself based on maybe attending one service without actually, um, you know, getting a better insight of the values. And that's not to say a church is bad. It's just that, where you might be going and your goals might not be the same as that person because different people, different organizations exist for different reasons. And I think similarly, even in dealing with people, sometimes you can see someone and he or she seems like a nice person. I'm not even talking in terms of like, man-woman relationship. I'm even saying in friendship in general. And you try to get close and do things, and then you realize, oh, actually, our goals and destination is different. And even in terms of running Westside and, what I do, I've had those moments where I've seen people and thought, okay, yes. And I've realized that actually, and I've had to draw back. So it's a lot easier to check out whether you align with a person, a people, a team, a setup, before you actually make a commitment. The Bible tells us very clearly that two can't walk together except they agree. And walking in alignment and agreement, when that happens, great things happen because you're bringing together unique strengths, unique gifts, unique attributes that complement each other. So there's a harmony and there's a progressive, and then things progress and great, like I said, great things happen. And if the reverse happen, it can be if you leave it too long, before pulling out, it can be disastrous. And the sixth principle, probably one of the most important and one that we don't speak much about, is making sure our spirituality is the anchor point for all of our relationships, not just the relationships we have with our spiritual family, but also even in relationships you have with friends, with other setups. The two people don't have to be spiritual. It is better if everyone is spiritual, but the reality is not everyone is spiritual, and you have to work with different types of people. But if you, as an individual, allow your spirituality to be your anchor point, I believe that will help you to have healthy relationships, even with unhealthy people at times. So people that maybe are not nice, people that are frustrating, people that don't believe what you believe, people that maybe you have to work with, but your values don't necessarily align. If you apply your spirituality and you allow it to be your anchor, that relationship can become a healthy relationship for you, in that it will order your steps in the relationship. It will enable you to act and take actions from a place of inner peace. It will guide you and your relationships with other people. It will enable you to connect with the right people, and it will give you a deeper insight to see challenges ahead and be able to overcome it. And it will, most importantly enough, it will enable you to deal with difficult relationships. And and I think for me, this is kind of one of those things I'm doing now that I really wish I'd known like 10, 15 years before, because I feel my trajectory and my life would have been so different if I applied these things. Whereas, you know, now I'm a bit older and wiser, I hope, but then if I felt like I didn't get on with someone or I didn't like someone, I would just shut down. And that was a big deal, because when you're playing sports and you need to work in a team setup, that's not the way, um, to progress, kind of thing. You need to ideally have a good relationship with the coach, because the coach is the one making the selections. You need to have a good relationship with the management, and you need to have a good relationship with your teammates. There were times that none of those applied. I just, I always felt like the outsider. I didn't know how to relate. I had the talent, but I didn't necessarily have the other things, which is why I believe very strongly in mentorship and I do what I do, kind of thing. And I was still able to achieve to a certain level, but maybe I would have achieved a lot more if I'd applied this principle in terms of spirituality. Certainly, knowing what I know now, going to certain environments in the workplace, running an organization like this, I've had to learn and I've had to apply a lot of these concepts. And that's why I believe that I've done better in these areas than some of the other areas in my past life, kind of thing, because I've learned how to deal with difficult relationships. I've learned how to act from a place of peace, not anxiety. I've learned how to look beyond people's faults, people's flaws. I've learned to accept the fact that I'm not perfect, and knowing that, know that other people aren't perfect, and try to work with them where they are. And I believe that all that is as a direct result of my spirituality. And I think that what spirituality does, when it comes to friendship, when it comes to relationship, is that, which inevitably there will always be times of disagreements. There will always be times where people do things that, you know, may hurt, point blank, at times may actually be very hurtful. But I think that if your spirituality is the anchor point, then regardless of what the other person is doing or the other people are doing, it enables you to act from the right place, from a place of wisdom, from a place of grace and discernment, rather than acting out of pain, out of anger, out of fear or pride, which is where many people act from, in relationships, which is why there are fractures, and some fractures, unfortunately, never recover, which is sad, because people lose good friends, good relationships, just because of pride. Sometimes you may want to say sorry, not because you were the right person or you were the wrong person, but just because that person has felt disappointed and feels negative about it. It's almost like you're acknowledging their pain, you're acknowledging their feeling. It's not always an admission of guilt. It's more about that, and it's more about trying to save the relationship, and trying to act from a place of health. And that's what healthy relationships are. And that's why spirituality is important, because you can use it to almost control the narrative of a relationship, even one that may not seem the best at the time. This is by no means saying to stay in an abusive relationship or in a relationship where one person is disrespecting you all the time. No. But that spirituality will guide you and enable you to walk with wisdom and with grace. And it's important, I think, because without spirituality, most relationships become about survival and become transaction based. So it becomes about what you can get from the relationship rather than what you can bring to the relationship. Whereas if you're talking about healthy relationships, then healthy relationships have to be based on the principle of love thyself as thy neighbor. And it can't just be about what you can get. It has to be about also the impact that you can have on this person in this setup, etc. And it must go beyond survival and transaction. And ultimately, I think that that will lead you to a place of fulfillment with most of your relationships rather than pain. And if you want to learn more about this from a biblical point of view, then Psalm 127 is a good one to look at. And the final principle of healthy relationships is that healthy relationships are progressive. It should involve growth, growth of you, and the other person, ideally growth of everyone involved. But at the very least, you should feel like you're growing in some way, shape, or form. There's something you're learning. You feel better as a result of the relationship. And in order for there to be growth, there has to be evolution. So as life happens, as life changes, as we all grow, we all get older, different things happen. The nature of relationships have to evolve. You know, what you can do, how you are. For example, when you're single, you don't have any children, for example, you're not married, you're probably more available to your friends. As life happens, you start to have children, you start to have a husband, you probably cannot make yourself more available. And that's where the principle of intentionality comes in, because you're in another season, another phase. And it doesn't mean the relationship has to die or come to an end, but you just have to evolve. And the way you do and act in that relationship also has to evolve. And progress is also about being able to overcome challenges together. So most relationships will have challenges. One person will do something the other person doesn't like at some point, but it's about being able to grow and push through those challenges. And that's what will enable better outcomes to come out of healthy relationships. So you want a healthy relationship, but you also want a productive relationship where good things are coming out of that relationship. And I think that at this point, I would say, in order for there to be progress, you also need to consider the 80-20 rule. So the 80-20 rule is essentially about, because human beings aren't perfect, you're never going to get everything that is perfect in one person or one setup. There are always going to be things that you might not agree with, you might not like, but it's about the majority. If most of what's in that person is good, and you connect with those person, and most of the other things we've spoken about today are there, then they've probably got 80%. The other 20%, you can just put it down to human imperfections. And I would say for a relationship to be healthy, you work around the 20%. Sometimes if you have two people that are like-minded, you can work through that, both of you can improve on that 20%. And that's the ideal situation. But you may not always get that. Some people may not care enough to change. But I think that if you're acting out of love and it's a healthy relationship, then 80% should be enough to get you through the day. And 80% should be enough to define your healthy relationship. Minus 20%, that is relates to abuse or disrespectful or all those kind of things. Those, if it's 20%, even with those type of things, then that kind of weighs more. And the 80-20 probably doesn't apply there. But in general, most people that of your associates with are probably your associates because you have things in common, and they're not bad people. So it's about focusing and harnessing that 80%, whilst kind of turning a blind eye or trying to work on and improve the 20% if it's identifiable. So once you've applied all those principles, what should one expect in terms of outcomes of implementing the principles? So I think some of the expected outcomes would be your emotional and spiritual well-being is obviously going to improve. Your purpose is strengthened, is sharpened. You're likely to be more impactful as a person in whatever setup you are. And, a good example of, a healthy relationship would be Jonathan and David, how, they were like closer than brothers. And some friendships are actually closer than blood relations. And that was an example of Jonathan and David to the extent that he was willing to put his life on the line. And even when his father was trying to do wrong, he stood in the gap and, he saved his friends' lives on a number of occasions. That I feel is a good illustration of a good, healthy, and productive relationship. David was blessed to have someone like Jonathan in his life. Um, and what are the rewards? Healthy relationships, if you're able to nurture and, nurture the relationships you have in your life with people around you, then it's rewarding, as well as the outcomes we've just discussed. Some of the rewards include um, honoring God. I say that as a reward because there's no how if you honor God that you won't be blessed and you won't be rewarded for honoring God. We spoke about honoring our bodies as a form of honoring God. I do believe having healthy relationships with various people is another way of honoring God, because for God's will to be enabled, and the truth is, many of you are ambassadors to God. You are the closest people are going to get to knowing what God is and what the church is about. So if you're honoring him through his actions, through your actions, you're also bearing witness. And if you're bearing witness, you're pleasing him. And if you're pleasing him, anything you ask for or desire, he will grant to you. Healthy relationships will enable you to grow and evolve, more so than you would think. If you put the time in, put the work into nurturing those relationships, you will find that you will grow and evolve at a faster pace than otherwise and a more productive pace, because those healthy relationships would also support your purpose and, improve you from a holistic health point as well, and probably get you closer to your heart desires. When I look back, I think that if I'd known what I known, if I had a much better relationship with more of the coaches, more of the players on the teams, because the teams that I played for where I did have good relationships, I was generally more productive. But there was still room for improvement. And I think if I had enabled my spirituality to be the anchor, then even in relationships where the other person wasn't necessarily doing right by me, I probably would have been able to get more out of the relationship just because I was being guided not necessarily by my human emotions, but I was being guided by my spirituality. And that would have enabled me to get more out of the situation than otherwise. So you live and learn, but moving forward, knowing what I know now, I can definitely say the relationships I have are much more productive. I'm able to get more from people, and just by trying to abide by these principles. Um, just a couple of warning signs of unhealthy relationships. So obviously, if someone where there's control and manipulation can come in sometimes it can be very subtle. And so you need to be sensitive and aware. But unhealthy relationships generally have control and manipulation as their basis. They tend to be fear-based, so they prey on your anxiety and what you don't have, etc., and they can be draining. Such relationships can be extremely draining and can ultimately isolate you from God or the community. I think sometimes the way that evil spirits or the devil as it is works is to isolate people, to make you feel you're alone. And I can remember a season where I felt really down when I was, playing basketball, and I just felt like no one really cared, and I felt very isolated. Over time, I realized that those things were baseless for those thinking. They make you focus on yourself more than you need to, and they isolate you. And once you isolate yourself, then it's good things don't happen. And it's like it's that in itself is draining and it's unhealthy to you and it's unhealthy to yourself. When we're talking about healthy relationships, it's as much about you and the relationship you have with yourself as that you have with other people. So if you don't have a good relationship with yourself, it's very hard to have a good relationship with other people. It almost starts from within. And in terms of applying the principles, I think as we come to the end of this model, I want you to reflect on a couple of things. really, just look at three important relationships you have that may not be in the best of health at the moment, and just consider on a scale of 1 to 10 how healthy are the relationships, what you think you can do to improve the health of the relationship, what you think is going to be the hardest thing for you to do, and then to finalize what steps you're going to take to improve the health of such relationships. I think that if you can answer those questions, it will definitely be a great starting point for you to ensure that majority of the relationships, if not all of the relationships you're able to have in your life, especially those that are meaningful, you can, get them to the point where they're healthy. If they're not healthy already, you can make them healthy. If they are healthy, you can improve the health and well-being of such relationships. And just to finalize, and to leave you with a few words, I think that, like we've spoken about a lot of things, but if I was to summarize what's most important, it's that healthy relationships require intentionality, and healthy relationships will sharpen your purpose, will enable you to grow, and at a faster rate than otherwise. They will impact you and others around you directly and indirectly, and ultimately they help you build legacies. And I think the final question I'm going to leave you with today is, when you're evaluating the relationships around you, ask yourself, who are you becoming through that connection? Because that will tell you whether or not it's worth pursuing that relationship, and how you need to manage and prioritize that relationship amongst others. Always ask yourself the question, who am I becoming? Am I becoming worse? Am I becoming better? Or am I staying where I am? Obviously, any productive and healthy relationship should mean that you're getting better and you're being more productive. And if that's not happening, then I think it's worth reflecting on the questions we just spoke about on the last slide. All right, I'm going to finish off for now. I hope that I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I hope that you've enjoyed this model. I hope that it's made sense to you, everything we've spoken about today. I want you to just hold fire. I'm going to end the video, but I'm going to come back and I have a special surprise. If you've managed to stay to the end, then what I have to offer, I have a gift that I want to give people that have stayed to the end. So just stay tuned and I'm going to come back and tell you about that gift in a minute. All right. Thank you. So I'm just going to pause the video for a moment. Sorry. So if you're still listening, if you're still awake, you're still here, then what I have to say is strictly for you. I've reserved this. I haven't said it during the course, or during any of the models, because I know that what I have to say is only for a limited number of people. So, like I said, Westside Healthy Living Space is part of a larger organization called Westside, the Women Elite Sports Empowerment Initiative, and an organization that organizes sports events, mainly for young women, but we run a range of mentorship programs, which is unisex for both men and women, in which we help them to improve their stats, to become better athletes, better coaches. We also run programs for coaches, sports personnel, and really our goal is to help them to become better sports people. So that could be breaking world records, that could be becoming a champion amongst champions, and just really getting more opportunities within the world of sports and supporting their health and well-being. But we have not existed for as long as we've had without the support of a community. And that's why we've put a program together, which is especially for our supporters. And what that program involves is a range of health courses. So other courses similar to the one you've listened to, and courses that are coming up. There's a few in the pipeline as well as a number of other goodies and being able to access other things that we do. And the price to become a member is a nominal fee, but something that, enables us it enables us to keep doing what we're doing and also to give back to you and to support you in your health and well-being journey. Our supporters come from obviously a wide range of life. In fact, most of our biggest supporters are outside the sports community. So, but what I want to do today is for those people that have listened to this, and if you've enjoyed this course and you feel like you'd like to tap into other things we have to offer and you want to become a member of our academy, then for today only, I'm going to make this membership available for free. I only have a limited number of slots because we can only manage a limited number of people for free. So we're going to make it available for free. So if that's you and you want to tap into what we're doing, if you want to be a supporter, then we won't say no. If you want to support us and contribute, that's also great. But I'm keen to engage and build a community. And all I would ask in return for you becoming a member of our academy for free and accessing all of our content and, our various things that we have to offer, our various health related initiatives that we have, unique health initiatives. All you have to do is send us your name, send us your email, send us your telephone number, and we'll send you a message. We'll send us what the next steps are. If you don't want to tell us your name, at least give us your phone number, your email. We'll send you the information, and then you can, we can we can start communicating and tell you what to do. It's not complicated, so you don't need to worry about that. But I just felt like I don't want to put this information for everybody because I can't offer it to everybody. So it's only for people that have got to this point and are listening to this video that I feel this is meant for. So so for a limited time only, and for people that have got to this point, we're making a limited number of spaces available for free to become a member and to access everything we're doing. So I look forward to seeing more of you. Engaging more with you, especially for those of you that have got to this point. So I'm going to say, so bye for now. That's the end of the video. Till next time, that's me done. I'll see you later. Bye.